Final Fantasy VII had a massive impact when it launched, aiding the growing popularity of Japanese role-playing games in the West and challenging the stereotypes of the fantasy genre. Here's 5 ways the 1997 original broke the RPG mold, and how these elements have been adapted for the 2020 remake. In the 90s, most RPGs were either top-down 2D like Chrono Trigger or Secret of Mana, or isometric like Diablo. Final Fantasy VII took a very different approach, layering 3D characters over 2D pre-rendered backgrounds, making the game's world extremely detailed. The 3D characters and enemies also added a cinematic quality to 3D battles, as the camera could now move around them to give a wider sense of scale. Almost 23 years on, Final Fantasy VII Remake will use the Unreal Engine to showcase every detail in high-res graphics, from the vast Midgar skyline to the strands of Cloud's spiky hair. What's more, Remake's battle system blends real-time action and turn-based strategy, making combat more visually engaging as players now have free roam over the battlefield. The majority of 90s RPGs were medieval-themed, using genre tropes like dragons, wizards, knights, and kingdoms. Final Fantasy VII chose a modern, heavily industrialized setting that wasn't conventional of the genre at the time. The story replaces castles and dungeons for subway stations and energy reactors, switches out tyrannical kings for greedy corporations, and trades bards and adventurers for enraged environmentalists. The city of Midgar, where the majority of Remake takes place, was one of the first to redefine fantasy in video games, with modern locations, science fiction, and advanced technology becoming the new standard. The Materia system lets players equip powerful orbs known as Materia to their characters to unlock new magic, abilities, summon spells, and stat boosts, creating more character customization than many other RPG skill systems at that time. The accessibility of this system encouraged players to experiment with different combinations. The same system carries over into Remake. Players aren't forced to stick to a designated skill tree or assign characters a fixed combat role. Instead, they can equip any materia to any character, switching up their skills on the fly. Some materia from the original game may be different this time around, but we've already had a glimpse of some summon spell materia, including Ifrit, Shiva, and Choco Mog. Final Fantasy VII's scale was unprecedented compared to most other RPGs at the time. The original's main story lasted around 40 hours, plus it had side quests, hidden cutscenes, and optional bosses. Remake is just as ambitious, and recreating such a mammoth world is a big task. The first game in the project consists of 2 Blu-ray discs and as much content as a mainline Final Fantasy title, focusing on the sprawling city of Midgar and diving even deeper into the world and character stories than ever before. While minigames and bonus stages are common in video games, Final Fantasy VII took them to another level. It had over 30 minigames, the most of any RPG to date. Minigames have grown in popularity in many modern-day titles, and are set to make a return in Remake, switching up the game's pace to keep players on their toes. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is almost here. If you're an intrigued newcomer and fancy a look at the main characters and villains of the game, check out our Who's Who in Final Fantasy VII here on IGN.